Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jasuranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Samunatiya Vanachari Samunatiya Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jana Vallabha Giridhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Jasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Samunatiya Vanachari Jamunatiya Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Jasuranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jasuranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Samunatiya Vanachari Samunatiya Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jayam Vishwapada Paramatma Parivrajikacharya Stotara Sarashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishwapada Paramatma Parivrajikacharya Stotara Sarashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Charles Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jai Kahu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kindagiri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navri Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Gangamaya Ki Jai Gangamaya Ki Jai Jamunamaya Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Naraskricham Naram Chaivam Narotaram Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamodhirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashlokir Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 5th chapter, text number 4. Tat sadhu varyadi shabhagma shamnaha samradito bhagavan ye napumsaham Ridisito yachati bhakti pute Gyanam Satatva Diganam Puranam Tatsaru Varyada Shagarvatmas Shamnaha Samradito Bhagavan Yena Pumsam Ridisitu Yachita Bhakti Pute Dhyanam Satatva Digamam Puranam Tatsadhu Varyadi Shabardma Shamnaha Samradito Bhagavan Yena Pumsam Ridistito Yachati Bhakti Puta Dhyanam Satatva Diganam Puranam Tat Therefore Sadhu Varya O Great One amongst the saints Adisha Please instruct Vartma, the path. Sham, auspicious. Naha, for us. Samraditaha, being perfectly served. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Yena, by which. Pumsam, of the living entity. Hridistitaha, residing in the heart. Yachchati, awards. Bhakti Pute, unto the unalloyed devotee. Jnanam, knowledge. Sa, that. Tattva, truth. Adigamam, by which one learns. Puranam, authorized, old. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, O great sage, please give me instruction on the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, so that He who is situated in the heart of everyone can be pleased to impart from within knowledge of the absolute truth in terms of the ancient Vedic principles delivered only to those who are purified by the process of devotional service. Responsively, therefore, O great sage, please give me instruction on the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, so that He who is situated in the heart of everyone can be pleased to impart from within knowledge of the absolute truth in terms of the ancient Vedic principles, delivered only to those who are purified by the process of devotional service. Purport. As already explained in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the absolute truth is realized in three different phases, although they are one and the same in terms of the knower's capacity to understand. The most capable transcendentalist is a pure devotee of the Lord, who is without any tinge of fruitive actions or philosophical speculation. By devotional service only does one's heart become suddenly purified from all material coverings, like karma, jnana, and yoga. Only in such a purified stage does the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart with the individual soul, give instruction so that the devotee can reach the ultimate destination of going back home, back to Godhead. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Te Sham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam. Only when the Lord is satisfied with the devotional service of the Lord does He impart knowledge, as He did for Arjuna and Uddhava. The jnanis, yogis, and karmis cannot expect this direct cooperation of the Lord. They are not able to satisfy the Lord by transcendental loving service, nor do they believe in such service to the Lord. The bhakti process, as performed under the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti, or devotional service following the prescribed rules and regulations, is defined by the revealed scriptures and confirmed by the great acharyas. This practice can help the neophyte devotee to rise to the stage of raga bhakti, in which the Lord responds from within as the Chaita Guru, or the spiritual master as superconsciousness. All transcendentalists, other than devotees, make no distinction between the individual soul and the super soul, because they miscalculate the superconsciousness and the individual consciousness to be one and the same. Such miscalculation by the non-devotees makes them unfit to receive any direction from within, and therefore they are bereft of the direct cooperation of the Lord. After many, many births, when such a non-dualist comes to sense that the Lord is worshipable and that the devotee is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, then only can he surrender unto the Lord, Vasudeva. Pure devotional service begins from that point. The process of understanding the absolute truth adopted by the misguided non-dualist is very difficult, whereas the devotee's way of understanding the absolute truth comes directly from the Lord, who is pleased by devotional service on behalf of many neophyte devotees. Vidura, at the very first instance, inquired from Maitreya about the path of devotional service, by which the Lord, who is seated within the heart, can be pleased. Verse again, therefore, O great sage, please give me instruction on the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, so that he who is situated in the heart of everyone can be pleased to impart from within knowledge of the absolute truth in terms of the ancient Vedic principles, delivered only to those who are purified by the process of devotional service. Narayanam namaskritam naram chaivam narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya mudirayat nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So this is Devahuti inquiring from Kapila, the personality of Godhead, as to what is devotional service. These purports are extremely technical because they describe how things progress from the subtle to the gross. And Prabhupada uses the example of television and radio, or radio was called wireless when it first came out. The idea that images and sound can be transferred through air or even space is a kind of a recent discovery. Even when the astronauts were traveling in so-called outer space, where there is reportedly no air, they could transmit sound. And we know from television and from cell phones or mobile telephones that sound can be transmitted wirelessly. So in this sense, this is an old process that has been going on for some time. It starts with ether. Ether is the word that Prabhupada uses for space, that there is sound in ether. This is mentioned in the purports, that sound comes from ether or nothingness. And the modern explanation is that with television and radio and mobile telephones, we can transmit sound and vision and videos and images through space, through air. And then you don't even have to have air. So this is a very technical explanation of devotional service. Now Vidura is asking these things to be explained by Maitreya. Vidura, formerly Yamaraj in a previous life, is very intelligent. And we know from reading Prabhupada's instructions that the Yamaraj could read minds. He actually knew what desires were, and accordingly meted out punishment to the non-believers, wherever they were in the universe. It's a very powerful thing to read minds, and lately it's been said that mind reading is possible. One has to be very advanced. Even in the material world, we can find people that are very advanced. Like sometimes people get the position of a high court judge, and they're able to remember many things because they're highly intelligent. And so people like Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu are even more intelligent and Yamaraj, because they could read minds. And mind is considered to be very important, more subtle than the grosser elements. Very difficult. But the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam is based on questions and answers, as Bhagavad Gita is too. Krishna and Arjuna are having a dialogue. And it's very important, because one of the things that makes Krishna consciousness movement different from many other movements or many other religious movements is that there's always questions and answers that we try to associate with people that we consider are more intelligent or more advanced than we are, to learn from them. And as Vishwanath Chakravarti says in the prayer that we sing every morning, without the grace of the spiritual master, no one can make any advancement. Sometimes in some religious traditions, people worship a guru who is departed. In a way, that's kind of like a diversion from ordinary consciousness. And even within the sort of Vaishnava movement, there are people who worship a deceased guru as their guru. But Prabhupada says that we have to have a living person that we have to inquire from, because that's how we actually understand things. Just like we're advised to give Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Chaitamrita classes so that the verses can be explained by living individuals who have some experience and have some advancement, because some of these things are very difficult to understand. Actually, this whole chapter is very difficult to understand, where Kapila is explaining, because he's the knower of everything, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what is actually devotional service at the request of Devahuti. He's taking care of her and imparting basic knowledge that's very difficult to understand. And so the need for a living guru to understand everything is actually essential. So in one sense, it's necessary to discriminate. Like in the instance of Maharaj Pariksit, even though he was a Raja Rishi, he was very intelligent and loving and protective towards his subjects. At one point, when he discovered that someone was torturing an animal in his kingdom, he became very like a policeman and was prepared to kill the miscreant. But I don't know what finally eventuated. But even people who are protective have to sometimes exhibit punishment, because they want to protect the people in their charge. So even great, that was 5,000 years ago. What to speak of modern day police forces, like we have now, like Scotland Yard and Sherlock Holmes and all that. Actually, a devotee sometimes has to be that way, has to discriminate. And as I will read in a fast-forwarded verse, it's necessary to develop relationships with like-minded people. I mean, Prabhupada explains that. It's kind of buried in the purports, but it's called Svajati, and I'll read a little bit about that later on. In a pamphlet that was published some time ago called The Transcendental Teachings of Prahlad Maharaj, Prabhupada concludes that by saying that one who becomes a lover of Krishna becomes a lover of everyone in the universe. So it's actually necessary, and it's part of devotional service to love all living entities, not just human beings, but animals, plants, and grass, and everything that's alive. But at the same time, one has to distinguish between those who are more advanced than we are. And it's said in the Upadeshamrita, akyati prichati, that one has to develop relationships. And in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Ishware tadadineshu yat kripad bhagavad bade, that a majjhima adhikari devotee has to make friends with the equals and worship the Supreme Lord and avoid people who are envious. So it's sometimes necessary, even though there's a great risk in all our preaching, to preach to the people who are not following strictly the regulative principles like meat eating, gambling, and illicit sex and intoxication. Many people are not following that, but they have to. There's always a risk. And some of those people, including myself, became devotees. So it's a risk worth taking. Sometimes it's said that preaching is a thankless task. Maybe, and Rupa Raghunath will know about this, because maybe a book distributor will approach 100 people during the day, and if just one person, if only one person takes a book or gives a donation, that's considered worth the rejections, the constant rejections of people. So it's necessary sometimes to discriminate, and I'm going to read a section also in this dialogue between Devahuti and Kapila Dev. This is later on. It comes in it's the 17th chapter of the 29th. It's the 17th verse of the 29th chapter of the third canto. And here Prabhupada says, the verse reads, the pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and the acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals, but all activities should be executed under regulations with control of the senses. This is very similar to the verse in the 11th canto that says, Ishware tadadineshu balisheshu divishatsu chat yatkari taraham bande Sri Gurudina tarane, that a majjhima adhikari devotee is one who is able to reveal his mind to equals, and that's necessary. And and as the etiquette we see was observed even by Krishna, who was offering obeisances to his people that were older in material time than he was, and in people that were younger he would even offer obeisances to. So these forms of etiquette are followed very strictly today because they were followed by the Supreme Lord. And even the Supreme Lord and Lord Chaitanya and Krishna, they had gurus, even though they knew everything. They wanted to teach us that we have to have a guru. We have to, just like Lord Chaitanya had two gurus, and Krishna himself was in the school of Sandipani Muni when he involved questions and answers, and he was in a learning process, although he knew everything. But it's said that he was so intelligent that he could hear once and never would forget. Anyway, the purport to this verse, it's very similar to the verse in the 11th canto that says that we should have the greatest respect for the spiritual master and the acharyas. So this is the purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated in the 13th chapter that one should execute devotional service and advance on the path of spiritual knowledge by accepting the acharya. Acharyopasanam. One should worship an acharya, a spiritual master who knows things as they are. The spiritual master must be in the disciplic succession from Krishna. The predecessors of the spiritual master are his spiritual master, his grand spiritual master, his grand spiritual master, and so on, who form the disciplic succession of acharyas. It is recommended herewith that all the acharyas be given the highest respect. It is stated, Gurushu Naramati. Gurusha means, open quote, unto the acharyas, close quote. And Naramati means, open quote, thinking like a common man, close quote. To think of the Vaishnavas, the devotees, as belonging to a particular caste or community, to think the Acharyas as ordinary men, or to think that the deity in the temple as being made of stone, wood, or metal is condemned. Niyamena. One should not, these are some of the words in the verse. One should offer the greatest respect to the Acharyas according to the standard regulations. A devotee should also be compassionate to the poor. This does not refer to those who are poverty-stricken materially. According to devotional vision, a man is poor if he is not in Krishna consciousness. A man may be very rich materially, but if he is not Krishna conscious, he is considered poor. On the other hand, many acharyas, such as Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, used to live beneath trees every night. Superficially, it appeared that they were poverty-stricken, but from their writings we can understand that in spiritual life they were the richest personalities. A devotee shows compassion to those poor souls who are wanting in spiritual knowledge by enlightening them in order to elevate them to Krishna consciousness. That is one of the duties of the devotee, a devotee. He should also make friendship with persons who are on an equal level with himself or have the same understanding that he does. For a devotee, there is no point in making friendships with ordinary persons. He should make friendship with other devotees so that by discussing among themselves, they may elevate one another on the path of spiritual understanding. That is called Ishtagoshti. There's another place where Prabhupada says that discussions between devotees are very important, and we should discuss these issues threadbare. He uses the word threadbare. I don't know if that was translated. Threadbare means it's exhaustive discussion. So that we should discuss it threadbare so that we can come to a deeper understanding. And when I was at university, we were instructed to not only read books, but to discuss what we learned with other people and thereby come to a, quote, deeper understanding, end quote. In Bhagavad Gita, there is reference to bodhiyantak parasparam, open quote, discussing among themselves, close quote. Generally, pure devotees utilize their valuable time in chanting and discussing various activities of Lord Krishna or Lord Chaitanya amongst themselves. There are innumerable books such as the Puranas, Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and more. And then this is kind of a thing that Prabhupada said. It got buried. It's in a way it's kind of buried in these purports, but it's a very important statement. Prabhupada says that friendship should be cemented between persons with mutual interests and understanding. Such persons are said to be svajati, open quote, of the same caste, close quote. I'll read that again. Friendship should be cemented between persons with mutual interests and understanding. Such persons are said to be svajati, of the same caste, unquote. The devotee should avoid a person whose character is not fixed in standard understanding, even though he may be a Vaishnava or a devotee of Krishna. And we heard from Hari Sori a few days ago how even one of Prabhupada's very confidential secretary assistants became a demonic character. And I was a temple president in Bhaktivedanta Manor at the time, and I received the same generic letter that Prabhupada wrote to all the temple presidents, that I regret to inform you that our godbrother so-and-so and so-and-so has become an envious snake. And I was very happy that I was in another country, because I sort of took it in stride, but I was glad I didn't have to deal with that person. But I was very happy. I thought it was very unusual for Prabhupada to say that. There was a photograph of Prabhupada, I think it was either in Newsweek or Time, one of those major magazines, of Prabhupada pointing his index finger to the camera. And the article went on to say that Prabhupada was not an ordinary guru. He sometimes was apparently cruel, and when I was on a walk with Prabhupada in London, and one of the devotees who was a sannyasi made a comment. He looked at the sannyasi, stopped the walk, and he looked at the eyes of the sannyasi and he said, "But don't you become a demon." So the idea is that even if one is in devotional service, one can become demonic. And that was an instance of the Prabhupada exhibited when he asked one of his devotees that he had become a demon, and he asked him to leave his company, or he voluntarily left his company. So just to continue this purport and bring it to an end, one should avoid a person whose character is not fixed in the standard devotional standard understanding, even though he may be a Vaishnava or a devotee of Krishna. If his character is not correctly representative, then he should be avoided. One should steadily control the senses and the mind and strictly follow the rules and regulations. And he should make friendship with persons of the same standard. So that's an excerpt from the 17th text. That's the purport and the verse. That's also in this same chapter. So one has to be very careful about association and develop, as it is said, develop friendship with people with mutual interests and understanding. It's not always possible to do that, and I think in the beginning when Prabhupada started his movement, he had to deal with some people who were not necessarily good people. They were guilty of sometimes illegality, but Prabhupada went ahead and forged ahead. There was an instance in which someone had discovered a file of letters that were written not by Prabhupada but to Prabhupada. They were written by leaders of his movement, saying that it was very difficult to follow the regulative principles, and they didn't know if they could do it. But we saw that Prabhupada forged ahead anyway, even though some of his important lieutenants were unable to follow the process, or they admitted that they were having difficulty. That's what makes a devotee very unusual. He is tolerant, and he's willing to take risks even for Krishna. So if there's any questions or quotes, now's the time to speak out. How does one become a devotee?
Great. Just for clarity's sake, thank you so much. How does one become deemed a demon from devotee to demon? What's the...
Well, there's several different reasons. The main reasons are that one could be offensive, even in the mind, or directly in words. That Krishna is very difficult to understand, as we know from these purports here, that it's very difficult to understand this philosophy. Maya is also very strong, very powerful, and as we take one step towards Krishna, Maya is pulling us away. And that's one reason. And another reason is that we have very deeply buried within our psyche sinful desires that are not manifested. So those can come to the surface, and therefore we can become demonic, even though we are situated in devotional service. It's possible. It does happen. Not very often, but it does happen. Anything else? Does that make any sense?
Thank you, Maharaj, for the class. On the point regarding preaching, the fact that although those who are madhyam, or even anyone in Krishna consciousness, were encouraged to go and preach, and outreach is the word used recently. Outreach, reach out, share this devotional practice with others. But in that process, sometimes we do overextend ourselves. We do things, perhaps sometimes late into the night, or do more work than our energy has. And so we do incur some kind of deficit, whether it's waking up late, chanting takes a bit of a hit and things like that. Are these kind of results okay? We just deal with them and recover and go back? Or do we have to find a service or do this outreach in a way in which maintains our sadhana?
Well, as I was saying earlier, there's always a risk. if you're going to try to convince the meat eaters and the fornicators and the gamblers and people like that to become Krishna conscious, it's risky. And one of the reasons that people are attracted by the material energy is that they get involved unnecessarily with such people in the name of reaching out or preaching. And although preaching has become a very unpopular term, we use the term reach out or reaching out. There's always a risk involved, and it means sometimes getting up late or just anything. It can be anything. And sometimes the Maya is present in the form of non-devotees. And for instance, a young man can be attracted to a young woman, which is kind of verboten in Krishna consciousness. But it does happen. And it's happened in the past to sannyasis and gurus who have become, who had illicit relationships with the opposite sex. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. There's always a risk because there's a lot of very attractive people of the opposite sex who are trying to entice us. And I think Prabhupada even once said that sannyasis even have dreams sometimes, that their former wives or girlfriends come to them in dreams to attract them away from Krishna consciousness. Sometimes it happens. Anyway, there's a risk always. And like you say, it's a thankless task, and sometimes it's called a thankless task. But there's always a risk involved in preaching work. But the good side is that in 55 years of Krishna consciousness being inaugurated in the West, it has grown, even though some soldiers have fallen by the wayside. But the lieutenants and the generals have continued on, and they aren't fazed by these temporary distractions, we might say. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. In the purport, Prabhupada was saying that we should avoid certain persons. So my question is, when we come across sometimes devotees who are misusing their position, whether it's professional or a position within the society, and they kind of hide what they're doing, and then you get to know when they don't get their way. But then sometimes even when we approach senior devotees, because devotees are always compassionate and they always want to see the good in others, they let it slip by, and then you hear another incident where then there's another case of malpractice or misuse of position, and then it goes on, and then they say, oh, it's not that serious, and it goes on, and then other innocent people, people or devotees come in contact with that person. So, sometimes it's very difficult to deal with, because it says that we should leave it up to Krishna. Because also if we do our part and report to the authorities, it's a tricky situation sometimes, because we observe that person, misusing their position. So what do we do?
Maybe you should write a book instead of just asking questions. In approximately 1996, it was learned that people in one of the major religions of the world had proven pedophiliac priests, and they were transferred to a different parish or diocese. In other words, their malfeasances were swept under the carpet. And in 1996, it was discovered that literally millions of dollars in out-of-court settlements were made because they didn't want the religion didn't want to turn these people over to the authorities, even though they were committing illegal acts. But they bribed people and they paid people off. And recently, I think it was Cardinal Pell was his name. He was one of the major bishops in this country. He was accused of pedophilia and then acquitted. But it was too late because his reputation was ruined. And he was the person that was trying to clean up corruption in the Vatican. He was like the Pope's right-hand man, trying to clean up the cronyism and old boyism that had begun to pervade in the Roman Catholic diocese, in the head of the place. So that was revealed. That came out. I was in Philadelphia at the time, and the Philadelphia Inquirer was on front page news. And that religious denomination has suffered greatly because it has come to their notice that they were trying to cover up things that were done illegally, that were done wrong. So it does happen, and it's unusual, but it does happen for many different reasons. But generally, it doesn't happen. Did that make any sense?
Yes.
I mean, if not, please tell me.
I just want to ask, how do we deal with it though, on a personal level, on an internal level, because we kind of like ordinary person, like a nobody kind of, and then we report it sometimes and it's not dealt with, and then we keep seeing things. Maybe it's not to the extreme of like sexual abuse or like that, but there's some not proper behavior going on. So how do we deal with it, like on an internal level? Because
I can't find the exact passage, but Prabhupada says that people that are not of the proper standard should be avoided. In other words, we can be friendly because we have to love everyone. That's part of the Krishna consciousness philosophy. But at the same time, we don't have to share our intimacies with everyone. And as Prabhupada says here, even though we don't like to do it, we have to avoid constant association with people that are not we don't have mutual interests with. So there's no 100% formula that's workable, but he does say that we should avoid such people and that we should cement relationships between people that are like-minded or that have a mutual interests with us. Any others? Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.